Okay, currently in the status quo, many artists and musicians are being exposed as depressed or suffering from mental illnesses by trolls and haters. People pitting them behind closed doors and quietly mock them, and this reflects in the price of their works and etc. This is not acceptable. We will provide a solution to this problem. Our model states that these artists' mental illnesses will not be emphasized during the process of their work being sold or auctioned off, and will be treated as simply another part of that artist's private life. My first point is that artists who struggle get more publicity and more money for their work. This is true for a couple of reasons. Firstly, people who suffer from mental illnesses are treated as special or even abnormal, meaning that their works are likely to be seen as special as well, completely unfair to others who work as hard and for less money and publicity. Secondly, many people think that mentally ill people are unable to create good works of art, which means that people who do get more publicity and therefore meaning that these people do get more publicity and therefore more money for their art. Thirdly, people who have mental disorders are often treated more delicately and more likely like a fragile glass piece than a regular human. They are human. They just want to be treated the same. And it's literally a human right to equality. Now it's just like, are we denying them this sort of respect? People who pay more to buy their works, while not deliberately insulting, can do this because it makes them seem more charitable and tread lightly with these sorts of people. This is also important to not happen for a few reasons. A, this creates a culture of inequality between artists with mental problems and those without. This means artists without mental problems will have a harder time selling their work for a higher price and may become worse for it, as I will expand on in my next point. B, ill will can be bred from this, meaning that jealousy roots from the fact that struggling artists get more than normal ones. For example, it is likely that had Vincent van Gogh not struggled so much and famously cut off his left ear, we would not have heard of him, and his works of art would have been treated as any other artist. Okay, I'll take a POI. Oh well, I tried. My second point is that these artists who do not struggle will believe that they have to struggle in order to get the same amount of publicity their counterparts with mental problems have. This is true for three reasons. Firstly, these artists who are not struggling with mental illnesses will find it unfair, and this can create lots of desperation and struggle. Secondly, they might try to make themselves seem like they are struggling to increase their publicity. However, this is detrimental to their own well-being as it creates more self-pity and jealousy. Thirdly, they might try to take it out on other people, which means they might attempt to antagonize the artist with mental health problems. This point also highlights how deeply unbeneficial it is to the main stakeholders, the artists who do not actually have any mental health problems. As A, these artists may actually start to struggle once they want to stop coping with all this inequality. This means that they will incorrectly assume that they will get more publicity, and since so many are doing this, the trend would backfire and our world of not exposing artists as having mental problems would be pretty much the same as the original one, except the original one in our model had a culture of happiness and self-love. Of course, this is just the general population, but even minorities will be affected to a degree as they will see social media, etc. For example, a young and inexperienced artist would be most affected by this because of the fact that they have not been exposed to the harsh world of the media, publicity, and using art, a hobby and love, as a career. As they are so inexperienced and unable to cope with this pressure, they would likely attempt to seem to have problems in order to get more money. But because of the reasons I have stated, I am proud to affirm. Thank you.
Today, as this first speaker of opposition, I will present my three main constructive arguments. Firstly, emphasizing an artist's struggle. Secondly, reducing the stigma surrounding mental illnesses. And thirdly, encouraging others with mental illnesses. But before I continue, please let me rebuttal the first speaker of proposition. She said, in the status quo, many artists and musicians are being mocked due to their mental health. If we discuss more about it and normalize it as a special trait of an artist, A, this can reduce bullying and mocking, and B, it will allow artists to improve due to motivations. Now, my other rebuttals will be inside my speech. Firstly, I will talk about how it emphasizes an artist's struggle with mental health can provide important context and insights into their work. You see, mental health of the artist can also be because of the historical background, the time, their upbringing, etc. Some is to think outside the box. Why wouldn't you be proud of what you can do and did? Mental health issues can profoundly impact an artist's creative process. influencing their emotions, perceptions, and experiences. By acknowledging and highlighting these struggles, we can gain a deeper understanding of the motivations and themes present in their art. It can help us appreciate the artist's ability to channel their pain or emotion into their work, resulting in powerful and evocative creations. For example, Yayoi Kusama, famous artist in Hong Kong, in Japan, had schizophrenia, which lets her develop her unique artistic expressions and unique art, including polka dots and her hallucinations that she saw while having schizophrenia inside of her art. The context of her mental illnesses creates an appreciation of her illusions in her art, which makes her stand out from the others. Remember, we are not supporting and romanticizing mental illnesses, but instead we are using it as an example of motivation, inspiration, and shows that there is no limit of how far you can go despite the challenges in life.
POI.
No. Secondly, you will reduce the stigma surrounding mental illnesses. By openly discussing mental health in the context of celebrated artists and successful people, we can contribute to broader conversations about mental well-being and foster empathy and understanding. It may encourage others
POI.
with similar issues to seek help or express themselves through creative outlets and maybe start a career and work on their passion. In this way, celebrating an artist's work alongside their mental health journey can serve as a platform for raising awareness and promoting mental health advocacy. And finally, remove negative stereotypes against mental illnesses. Thirdly, we will encourage/influence the other people that have mental illnesses. By doing this, we can encourage people with mental illnesses that think they are worthless and they can actually do a lot. Many people who has mental illnesses, mental health issues, are staying on their homes, sitting on the couch, not because they can't stand up, but because they are hopeless. We can find those artist role models to motivate these people to work harder, use their mental health's good side effects to benefit them even more, and become more successful than they ever were. With the influence of these professionals, people will see that even with the obstacles life gives you with, you can still do a lot. To conclude, today I have said my rebuttal, and my 3 points. For that reason, this motion shall definitely fall, and I'm very proud to oppose.
Currently,
Thank you.
there is an elephant in the room concerning the emphasis of an artist's mental struggle when celebrating an artwork. The world the opposition is suggesting is one where the mental illnesses of an artist are placed over the art itself in importance. This issue is of significant importance to the artist and thus should not be held lightly. The opposition has stated that not emphasizing an artist's mental illness would reduce stigma around the artist's condition. According to the negative team's case, this emphasis would reduce negative views towards mental health issues. For this, I'll provide 2 pieces of extraneous response. This benefit is not exclusive and can also be caused in our case as artists' privacy in their conditions have been respected. Even if this is untrue, this harm can easily be solved through more direct methods such as public education programs. Now onto my substantives. Emphasizing an artist's mental condition would create an ethical dilemma. The mechanism behind this argument is that describing an artist's mental illnesses without consent from the artist would create an ethical dilemma. This would be a violation of the basic principle of autonomy, or the right for someone to decide what actions can be taken with their private information. The opposition's proposal will negatively impact the main stakeholder in this instance, the artists themselves. Currently, the majority of these artists are deceased and thus cannot give consent for their private information to be used. As a result, emphasizing their personal information would be a violation of their autonomy. For example, the mental status of Van Gogh was disclosed to the public. This act was severely disapproved of by his family for privacy reasons. The opposition's proposal will negatively impact these artists in 3 main ways. First, the opposition's proposal would cause controversy in society concerning this breach of autonomy. Second, the artists themselves would be severely disrespected along with their artworks. Sad, as a result, viewers may focus more on this ethical controversy rather than the artwork itself. All of these harms are mutually exclusive to the opposition's case. On the other hand, in our case, the private information of artists will not be disclosed, thereby avoiding these contentions. Therefore, emphasizing artists' mental illnesses will create controversy in society due to the violation of autonomy. I'd like to take a POI.
Yes, I have a POI.
Yes.
So do you not believe an artist's success may not just be based on their illnesses, but instead their upbringing, influences, or even their social surroundings?
That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is the ethical reasons behind this and how it may not be disclosed. This is completely unrelated to how an artist's success may relate to their mental illness. Now on to my second point. Second, specifically emphasizing an artist's poor mental condition would place more focus on these mental illnesses rather than the artwork itself. The mechanism behind this argument is that when emphasis is directed towards an artist's mental health conditions, the public would shift their focus away from the art itself. This would negatively impact the main stakeholder here, art viewers. They represent the primary method in which information about artworks and their artists is dispersed. The opposition's proposal would impact them in three main ways. First, they may focus on mental health conditions more than the actual art. Second, the content spread to the public may be biased against the artist due to their mental health conditions. Third, this may in turn lead to misunderstandings about those with mental health conditions. All of these harms are mutually exclusive to the opposition. In our world, the primary focus would remain on the artwork itself rather than the mental health conditions. Thus, I am proud to affirm.
As the second speaker of side opposition, today we completely disagree with the notion that an artist struggle with mental illness should be emphasized when celebrating their work. Today, I will present three ideas or arguments on why we disagree with the motion. Number one, I'm going to talk about how we should emphasize an artist's struggle because it can educate many and encourage many in a positive way when it comes to pursuing art. And secondly, how emphasizing on mental illness for artists has social benefits. So, before I begin with my speech, allow me to begin with some rebuttals to side proposition. They said that mental issues can take over the art itself. But while an artist's mental health issue might inform or influence their work, it does not necessarily overwhelm the art itself to make it less valuable. Struggles with mental health are a common human experience that can provide insights and perspectives that actually deepen their artistic expression. They also said that it is a violation for artists as it is a very private discussion when talking about mental health problems. But even while revealing personal health details without consent is, in your world, unethical, public figures' experiences could help address stigmas and improve support for others facing similar challenges. Now on to my arguments. An artist's creative works often stem and are shaped by their personal experiences and inner life. Mental health struggles, in particular, can greatly influence the lens through an individual artist sees and engages with the world. By understanding the obstacles and torment certain artists battled, audiences gain deeper empathy for what inspired certain themes, styles, or subject matters in their body of work. For example, knowing that an author struggled with depression brings their poems depicting loneliness and isolations, and novels portraying mental anguish to a life in a much richer way. It allows readers to connect with those creative expressions directly to the author's own journey through misery, giving those works an added layer of authenticity and power. Similarly, being aware that a musician dealt with bipolar disorder may shed light on what motivated certain manic or melancholy songs. Further, recognizing an artist's mental health challenges provides meaningful context about the circumstances and a state of mind in which they were able to create at all. Considering the difficulties of living with a mood disorder or anxiety, no thanks. For instance, achieving success or producing respected art becomes all the more impressive and inspiring. It underscores their perseverance and channeling their inner demons constructively into art, rather than letting illness defeat them. Secondly, emphasizing on mental illness for an artist has social benefits. Drawing attention to successful artist struggles with mental health can help reduce the stigma around these conditions. Internationally renowned creators also face these challenges, makes the issues more credible, and sends the message that people can still lead accomplished lives even when dealing with mental illnesses. It will encourage people with mental illnesses in the world who want to accomplish artistic goals or their own goals. We believe that this is better than simply labeling these artists as mad. In conclusion, we believe that opposition should win this debate because of the debate-winning speeches our team talked about. Never been so proud to oppose this motion.
Opposition proposes a world where privacy is non-existent, when artistic value is sacrificed for a competition of who suffers the most. This is a world of art no one would want. I have identified a major clash in the debate. The first one is regarding whether revealing artists' mental illness will reduce the stigma behind mental illnesses. They say that it will decrease stigma among other people with mental illness. We say that this is not relevant with the motion. We should win this clash because the motion is about what is happening when we are celebrating art. However, the opposition is trying to tell you how they can decrease stigma when the artist has mental illness. This has nothing to do with the art, celebrating the art itself. However, the motion is specifically about the art itself. And even if you don't believe this, the opposition has also asserted that they will motivate other people. However, why should we use artists as a motivation for people? Many people around the world will not resort to art as something as many people will not relate with art because many people around the world do not heavily participate in art. Why not use other celebrities such as sporting stars that many other people can relate to? Even if you don't believe this, our arguments are still stronger because other people will force themselves to suffer in order to get recognition, as I'll later explain on in my summary. Now I'll take a POI. I tried. Now onto my summary. We should win this debate because our arguments are stronger. Our argument about how it will make people who don't have mental illnesses suffer will do big damage to society. In the opposition's world, art is judged not on real artistic value, but by who suffers the most when creating the piece of art. This means that artists who don't suffer will feel like their art is unappreciated and will also want to suffer themselves just so their art can get valued. This is stronger than the opposition's argument because it means other artists will want to suffer just to make their art appreciated, and that would be unjust. This means that more people around the world force themselves to struggle because in the world the opposition proposes, it is a battle of who has the most mental illness, not who has the best artistic value. Because the opposition arguments forces more artists around the world to force themselves to struggle, we should win this debate because they propose to unjustly value art on who has the most mental illnesses. This is why we should win the debate. Thank you.
As the final speaker of this debate, allow me to wrap this discussion up as well as rebutting a few points from side government. The first speaker stated that a person should not be judged by their mental illness, but the art itself. We hear that there are many reasons for art to be successful, not just mainly because of mental illness, failing to explain how the success can come from a person's upbringing, influences, social surroundings, etc. Many artists are successful like musicians, film directors that don't suffer from mental illnesses. The second speaker too stated that some artists don't want to be recognized for mental illness. We understand, though we would like to state that quite often artists don't know that they suffer from mental illness themselves. Also, for them, it's a form of escaping their illness and expressing themselves, as they are sometimes unconsciously creating art, not for success, but as a form of expression of escape. The final speaker told us that why should we use artists as an example when we can use sports athletes that have illness, etc. No, thank you. We believe that you are going off topic and therefore we are unable to reply. We believe that artists that are born with illness or are less fortunate, such as Da Vinci, Van Gogh, etc., should be praised and emphasized when celebrating their work, as it helps other people with mental illness rather than being seen as a disadvantage. No, thank you. But a way to actually become aware or celebrate their struggles. It increases awareness from the society of the artist's struggles, and this necessarily shouldn't be seen as a shame. It helps society appreciate and understand the disorders and how it affects them. I shall now move on to the clashes of this debate. We believe the first clash is whether or not the emphasis of mental health, no thank you, undermines the discussion on art itself or enhances it. Although the government proposed that we should not focus on the arts because of the we should not be focusing on the mental illness and the art instead. We outside opposition would like to ask, would they not be grateful? No, thank you. For they have come so far, yet even with the mental illness, they still have pushed through, opening and motivating other minds that they should look at their illnesses as a benefit, not a disadvantage. Thus, it's possibly because of how their mental struggles often what creates the work they wish to express. For example, advancements of arts. No, thank you. Sometimes an artist's interpretation can lead to a new wave of art. For example, Van Gogh, an impressionist of Kasuma, with the pop art. This may lead to new waves of artists emerging that can learn from, adapt, and perhaps advance this art to new forms and platforms. No, thank you. Appreciation of artists' works makes you appreciate the art that much more. An example of this is a famous painting called Arises by Van Gogh. It displays a happy field of flowers in a poppy field, yet only one lonely white flower seen dripping and sad. What you assume is basically Van Gogh. Similarly, in the artwork Starry Night, the Dark Tower depicts the asylum Van Gogh is in, and how dark it is surrounded by beautiful stars and nightlife outside. Had we not known about Van Gogh's mental illness, we might not appreciate these finer details themselves. The second clash, we believe, is how being celebrated over art becomes a benefit. Seeing the success of others may also encourage those with mental illness to pursue art, which in turn could help with their diseases. If the government hasn't noticed yet, many people with mental illness suffer from isolation, depression, anxiety. For art can be a form of release, self-healing, therapy for those with mental illness. Therefore, from what we have told you today, we believe that we have clearly won this debate and that the motion should fall.
Gentlemen,
thank you.
Fellow debate judges of today's last motion, we strongly believe that we should win today's debate competition and the motion shall not stand. Today, the motion we debated on clearly gives us a platform of discussion to talk about whether or not we should emphasize an artist's struggle with mental illness when celebrating their art, or not. We shall win this debate today because of many reasons. Today in this reply speech, I'll talk about the main clashes of today's debate and what major flaws proposition made that make us in a better position and makes us the better debaters. Now allow me to firstly introduce the main clashes of this debate. They, in their speech, said that some artists do not want to cope with these problems, and they cannot cope because due to the hate and the teasing of being different in a so-called negative way. We propose more recognition and improve the normalization of mental illnesses to the extent that we do not romanticize mental illnesses so that more people are educated and understand what they go through and how they create such magnificent pieces of art. But what are you going to propose, proposition? They also said that they should win the clash about stigmatization. We said that we would decrease the stigmatization, but they said this was irrelevant. This is not irrelevant because we are announcing across the world about the mental illnesses that many people face and encouraging people with mental illnesses to do something instead of only doing art. This way, it can be achieved through the creator of those art. And they also said that not many people resort to art when they need motivation, but you are clearly undermining the power of art and the art community. You guys were clearly just making assumptions that not many people express their mental illnesses in the form of art. They also said that many new artists will force themselves to struggle and have depression to have good art. Untrue, because we clearly stated in our arguments that we would not emphasize an artist's struggle to the limit where many people start romanticizing mental illnesses and try to hurt themselves and make themselves struggle in order to make good art. Also, each artist has their own way of expressing themselves anyway, and you are trying to create an environment where the statements new artists would hurt themselves to make good art, which is nothing but a rigged assumption and stereotype without any backup information on why you think this way and what info you relied on. In conclusion, side opposition should clearly win today's debate and the motion shall fall. Thank you.
For several reasons. Our team has stated how it will cause artists to force themselves to suffer and also how it undermines the whole value of art itself. The opposition has tried to bring forward the argument, emphasizing the artists' struggle with their mental health to show their motivations and abilities in the art. This is good and makes them beautiful, but we disagree with the opposition's motive. We say that the amount of people with mental illness is less than the general public who are watching every single act of those who have been exposed as mentally ill. If they were exposed, there will be trolls and haters, and the mental constitution of the mentally ill are more delicate, meaning that the blow will be more heavy, and their beautiful art will no longer be created as much or as well. This would actually only further discourage the already suffering people. They say that artists' art often stems from their mental illness, but is it really necessary to show it to everyone? No, they say that this will create social benefits and decrease stigma. Well, this is not relevant. We are celebrating the art itself, not about mental illnesses only, and art is not able to be relatable to everyone. Not only this, but many people around the world don't actually relate to art, such as using it for therapies and self-healing. They give examples of paintings and artworks in which people knew about artists' inner struggles, such as Van Gogh, to show more recognition about their time. This is a problem because even though people know about this, people are going to suffer because of the fact that they want to get better at art and want to be like those artists. They also say that they're not going to romanticize art, mental illness and art, but like it's not like you can actually help it because there's the media and social media, which in which you can't control it. Our arguments are also stronger for several reasons. Firstly, our argument about how it will force artists to suffer will make an unjust world where art is about who suffers the most, not who paints the best painting. This will cause suffering around the world as artists suffer in order for their work to be appreciated on social media, for example. This will have a bigger impact than any of the opposition's claims, as it will cause pain around the world. And the opposition, by siding with this motion, wants to create pain amongst other artists in order to get a better reputation and money, drawing on examples literally with Van Gogh. They tell us once again that they're not going to romanticize art, but then once again, we will tell you that you can't actually control that. They tell us themselves that we should understand and appreciate the art. This actually causes more stigmas and makes it seem like everyone has to somehow get a mental disorder to become a good artist. Secondly, our argument about how it defeats the purpose of art itself. Art will no longer be valued for artistic value in the opposition's world, but for who has the greatest mental suffering. This will have a big impact on people around the world who are suffering from mental illnesses. This means it's literally a competition who manages to get the most mental illness. This is why we should win the debate. Thank you.